Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Kirschenbaum. Thanks for joining us today. Today is October 26th, 2023. We are in the towards the end of the Central Station 2023 webinar series, and we sort of moved into the big leagues at this point. So we've got COPS today with David Smith. He's the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at COPS. COPS, of course, needs no real introduction to any of you because it's a leading central station in the United States, perhaps elsewhere too. I'm not sure. But David's going to give you a full presentation about and the title of this webinar series is why you should be using COPS as your central station. COPS is on the Alarm Exchange. They're a great central station. I don't know what else to say. David certainly knows the alarm industry, and he's got a nice starched press shirt for this presentation. So I know he's taking it very seriously. David, I am making you the presenter right now. So let's see you put your screen up on everyone's screen at this point. There you go. And I am now going to and you're up at bat, David.
Okay.
Oh, everybody, wait, before I do that, everybody please hold write your questions in. I'll be asking David questions, the ones you ask and maybe some of my own at the end of his presentation. I'm not sure how long it's going to last, but whatever it is, we will have time for questions and answers. And we will get answers, and I hope you have questions. David, take it away.
Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate you hosting these webinars and giving us an opportunity to tell our stories. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to learn a little bit about COPS. You know, I think this is an important topic, not just because I'm biased and I work for a monitoring company, but also choosing a monitoring company is one of the most important decisions that you're going to make as an alarm company or integrator. But identifying the difference is somewhat difficult. So, and then I thought, you know, I'm a COPS guy talking about COPS, and I'm obviously biased. So why would you believe what I say? So I thought I'd start a little bit about myself and about my experience in the industry to kind of give you an example or you know, share my experience of coming over to COPS. So again, my name is David Smith. I work with COPS. I have 35 years of alarm experience. The last 15 years with COPS in a marketing and business development role. But prior to that, I have 20 years of operational experience. So I've not only built 3 UL listed monitoring centers in South Florida, Birmingham, Alabama, and Chicago, Illinois. I was also directly involved with the acquisitions of roughly 24 companies during that time. And after the acquisition, I ran several of these companies before consolidating them down into a few. So I've had my share of experience with other monitoring companies. So I'm going to mainly focus on my first 20 years in operations because honestly, during that time, you work with so many monitoring companies, it became hard for myself to start to identify the differences in companies. So I can understand why it'd be difficult for you. First thing I can tell you based on that experience is these aren't differentiators. Almost all companies have, if they have these things, and I'll talk about that in a minute, if they have these things, they're not differentiators. We all have them. For instance, we all have UL listings. We all have, we're monitoring companies. So of course we monitor accounts of all types in all different formats. We monitor in all 50 states, and we monitor in Canada, Puerto Rico, and other US territories. Fully licensed throughout the United States. We have a ton of dealer services to support you. We belong to so many different associations. We integrate with third-party monitoring services. We have dealer programs for funding, equipment access, and other value-added things. And price. I wouldn't even call price between monitoring companies these days as a big differentiator. And one thing I'll talk about a little bit later is these two things. If I can get my slide to advance, is these two things. I said if your company has these things, that they wouldn't be differentiators, but you might be surprised to learn that not all monitoring companies are even UL listed. And I'm talking about some that are fairly sizable. They've decided for some reason or another that they don't need a UL listing. The other is having multiple locations. I can tell you that just having multiple locations may not add to the value of or reliability of monitoring, and I will talk about that a little bit later. So if these aren't differentiators and every central station has them, then what are they? I'm going to break them down into 6 different differentiators that I noticed when I came to COPS that made a big impression on me. So I used to think that there were 5, by the way, but I added number 4 because it's a recent issue that I think central stations need to address. So I'm going to move through some of these quickly. Hope we leave time for questions at the end. So if you want to make notes and ask me about them, some of them are fairly complicated concepts, but I'm going to try to boil them down in a way that it's easy to understand. The first one is wholesale or retail. To me, I think you got to pick a side. I've worked for both wholesale companies, retail companies, and companies that tried to do wholesale and retail. You can do wholesale and sell your monitoring directly through alarm dealers. You can do retail and go directly to consumers, but you can't do wholesale and retail, in my opinion, is because they conflict with each other. And and simply put, I think it's safe to say that every company needs to know, 1, what their business is, and 2, who their customers are. You take this this model here. Some of the companies do this. Wholesale and retail creates conflict for leadership, focus, personnel, technology, capital, time, everything. You're trying to split the resources you have running two different businesses. And I can tell you that money and time spent on one is money and time that's not going to spend on the other. And I can also tell you, in my experience, that if there is a conflict between leadership focus or personnel or capital, retail wins. Why? Because retail earns a significantly more revenue than wholesale does. Plus, going directly to consumer totally cuts out our customer, the alarm dealer, because we'd be competing with business. At COPS, we're 100% retail or wholesale. Sorry about that. 100% wholesale, which means 100% of our resources are focused on supporting our dealers. We don't go direct to consumer. We don't compete for business, and there's no question at COPS who our customer is. We also, by the way, we also don't compete with our distributor partners by selling equipment directly to customers. Or even to dealers. We are 100% monitoring. That's our business. That's all we do, and that's all we focus on. The 5th one is monitoring platform and dealer access. Now, this one might surprise you. I mean, it's a monitoring platform, but I can tell you one thing: all other companies have in common. They all use a third-party monitoring software platform to monitor your accounts, and 3 of those platforms are owned by the same company. Now, I've used all of the major monitoring platforms, and I can tell you that they all have at least a few things in common, a few issues in common, I should say. First, the software support is remote. The programmers, the software people, the guy troubleshooting your system isn't at your office. So let's say you have an issue with monitoring, the system locks up, a module's not working. They have to access the system remotely if they can. Then I've also learned that no 2 companies use these systems exactly the same. Now, why is that an issue? Because you got data fields that could be used for various things. You have different modules that are deployed on the monitoring platform, and you have different nuances on each one of the systems, but they all got to interact in lightning speed to support a reliable, fast response time. And when somebody dials in or gets into your system to try to troubleshoot your system, and you hope it's not down because they might not be able to get in, they have to kind of orient themselves with the system, understand how you're using it, figure out where the problem might be, and then fix it. So this adds to downtime. One of the other things that's frustrating is it limits your ability to create competitive advantages. All of the other software platforms that I've worked on, if you want something special or you want something done just for you, they're going to decide, are we going to do this for you Can we do this for you? Or do we, you know, they decide, they're the controller over whether you get this competitive advantage. And then to add, and then when they do, they charge a pretty penny to do the custom programming. And then to add insult to injury, somewhere down the line, it's been my experience that these companies, since they now have this great new module that they built for somebody, they offer it to other companies somewhere down the line, either in a new general release or at a fee. So you're basically paying to make their software better that they then capitalize on later. On the other hand, COPS is the only company with a proprietary listed monitoring platform. In other words, we're the only company, monitoring company, that has a monitoring platform built by a monitoring company, not by a software company. Generations was built specifically for us, by us, for our dealers. It doesn't have any bloatware in it, doesn't have any extra modules in it. It doesn't have any dormant things. It doesn't have other things that need to interact with things. It does what we need it to do for our dealers. All of our support is on site, and they only support our systems. They don't need to learn how the system is used to support it. They already know because they wrote it and they support it. All of the advantages that we built are unique to us and benefit only our dealers. Our Empower dealer access system was built for alarm dealers with the input from alarm dealers. I'd say like for dealers, by dealers kind of thing, but the dealers tell us what the tools they need, and we build them for them to help them run their business. So all of this makes COPS the controller of our own destiny and gives us some agility and ability to tailor our system to benefit our dealers. And soon we're going to be launching Empower 2.0, which is going to do away with the mobile and desktop version. It's going to be all-in-one responsive, and we're going to bring some new tools. Number 4, exceeding industry standards. Now we think that all of these bring something to the table. UL is the gold standard for monitoring. FM also brings independent verification. IQ, TMA. They all bring something to the table for a monitoring center. We think that it's healthy to have somebody else look at your book, so to speak, look under the hood and figure out if you're following procedures and that you live up to a standards. But I think there's 2 shortfalls when it comes to standards. First, standards by definition create a minimum requirement for certification. Now think to yourself, you're going to do advertising to your customers and you say, hey, rest assured, our monitoring adheres to a minimum standard. Do you think that would go over well? We don't think it was. We think your customers will expect more, and we think you should too. So like any industry also, standards tend to be reactionary rather than proactive. They tend to find a problem and then fix the problem rather than identify the problem and prevent the problem. And that's the true for most industries. So I'm not taking a shot at our industry's standards here. But what do I mean by this? I mean, where am I going with this? You remember this headline? Exposure to sensitive data of 143 million Americans? I do. It was the first data breach that really caught my attention because some of my information is probably potentially out on the web now, and probably yours. So weren't you surprised that a company like Equifax could be breached? I know I was. And you may not even know the half of it. Did you know that the hackers that accessed Equifax were on Equifax servers for 76 days and accessed 51 databases before they were stopped? So I didn't know that either. Did you also know that the breach and the subsequent 650 million in payouts could have been prevented by installing a simple known security patch? So in other words, the breach was attributed to human failure. Somebody didn't update the firmware, install a patch, and this was the result. So you're probably thinking, that's Equifax, that was almost 7 years ago. However, here's a representation of the data breaches since 2017. The size of the circle represents the size of the data breach. Do you see the Equifax breach? I'll help. Here's the Equifax breach, all the way down here at the bottom. There were much larger data breaches since the Equifax breach. This is a problem, and it's only getting bigger. Still not concerned? Here's this year alone, 529 data breaches this year. 343 in the United States alone, and small to medium businesses are becoming, it was the #2 target, and that statistic is growing. I think just like the Equifax breach that caught my attention, here's one that caught my, also what I forgot to say is this was back in July. So if these averages hold true throughout the year, we're probably over 700 breaches just this year alone. So the Equifax breach got my attention, but another one that got my attention is the breach 2 weeks ago from 23andMe. You think having your financial data compromised didn't concern you? How about having some of your genetic data float around the dark web? I don't happen to be on 23andMe, but still, these companies, big prominent companies that should have data security in place, are being breached. The other thing is ransomware. Ransomware is on the rise. It's basically something gets onto your computer, either maliciously from the outside, or maybe even introduced by some of your own employees, without knowing. Small and medium business is also a growing target, mainly because they pay. Of the $2.2 million in demands per attack, the reported payment is approaching somewhere around $1 million. And what's more scary is the average downtime of a ransomware attack is 24 days. Now imagine your monitoring company being offline for 24 days. We can't, we don't want to. And did you know that the percentage of organizations who paid the ransom and could not retrieve their data is 19%? This scares us, and we think it would scare you as well. So, we're not cybersecurity experts, we're monitoring experts. So it's one thing for us to think that we're secure, it's quite another to get independent verification, like a UL inspection. Have somebody else look at your business and decide and tell you, are you doing the right thing? So we work with companies that are experts in these fields to help us stay ahead of the curve, to anticipate threats. And to this end, we started to seek our SOC 2 audit in 2017, coincidentally the same year as the Equifax breach, but actually we started pursuing it prior to the Equifax breach. What's a SOC 2 audit? You may never even heard of this because I don't know of any other company that has it. They might, but I don't know of one. SOC 2 audit, it basically looks at our security, our system security, our systems uptime and availability, our processing integrity, confidentiality of records, and privacy. It's very thorough. A UL inspection takes maybe a week or less. A SOC audit takes 6 months to complete. It looks at all of your hardware, firmware, software is current. For instance, it'll make sure you're not running on a 10-year-old firewall with outdated firmware, and that you're following your own physical and software cybersecurity protocols. So it verifies your settings and how your systems interact with each other to make sure that the interaction and the connection between the databases are also secure. It confirms that you're following your own SOPs, and in short, it just makes you a better company. And that's why we decided to pursue SOC. And almost 7 years after our certification, I still don't know, as I mentioned before, of another monitoring company that has a SOC 2 certification. The types of companies that have SOC 2 are healthcare companies, retail, financial services, software as a service, cloud storage companies, cloud computing, and other companies with sensitive data. That would include us, in our opinion. So we're taking methods to make sure that we're safe. We're also HIPAA compliant in our MPERS division, so we safeguard the privacy and security and integrity of protected health information. We work with companies to do network penetration tests. Basically, it's white hat hacking. We hire companies to look at our network and see if they can get into it and then tell us what we need to do to fix it. Internally, our workstations are locked down. You can't put a thumb drive into one of our computers. You can't install software. It's basically there and designed to do the job that you're supposed to do, and you don't have access to those things. Our passwords adhere to NIST standards, which with outlines how many characters it is, upper, lowercase, things like that, but it adheres to those standards. We use two-factor logins, and perhaps my favorite, we perform random phishing email campaigns. Now, the phishing email campaigns send emails to our own companies, enticing them to click on links. I can tell you, the unsubscribe link at the bottom of that junk mail might not be an unsubscribe link. So that by doing this to our employees, it tests them, trains them, gives them immediate feedback on the links that they shouldn't have clicked and what they should do to be better. And it just keeps security on top of mind for everybody. Okay, number 3, so it is redundancy. Now, I said at the beginning, not having multiple sites is not a primary differentiator, but having redundancy is, and I'll explain the difference. So we began our redundant site monitoring plan shortly after 9/11. We thought, it wasn't a stretch of the imagination that some catastrophe could befall our only monitoring center. It didn't have to be a plane, it could be a car that veered off the road, a fire, or a number of things that could have completely disabled our ability to monitor, which likely could have put us out of business. And if you were with us, yours too. So, but also, as we opened our second site in Arizona 20 years ago now, we also learned in our experience that it doesn't take a complete destruction of a monitoring center to interrupt monitoring. What's more likely to really affect response times and service level is what we call some local condition. It does 2 things. It increases traffic. You ever been through a hurricane, a nor'easter, any kind of natural disaster? The signal traffic goes through the roof. But it also does another thing. Your employees can't get to the work to handle those signals. So you got more signals and fewer employees, and the response times go to a place that is unacceptable. Plus, you're having a hurricane in Florida and you have all this extra traffic and you don't have people that can travel to and from work. Somebody pressing their panic button or medical button in California doesn't really care about that. They need your help now. Now, these could be like natural things like snowstorms and other weather events. They could be man-made situations as simple as somebody with a misplaced backhoe digging up your fiber. Civil unrest. We even had riots near one of our central station, and we're not going to send employees to and from work when that's going on. And we learned it could also be public health. It doesn't have to be COVID. It could be an outbreak of the flu. If your dispatchers can't get there, then you're going to have a problem with response times. The point is that no place in the United States that you could put a monitoring center that's immune to these situations, and all of them can affect your service level. So how do you overcome these? You do it with redundancy. And as I said before, having multiple locations is not the same as having redundancy. Now, I'm probably embarrassed to admit, but I'm a curious guy. So I'll get on Google Earth and I'll look at competitor monitoring centers. And wouldn't you know that one day I looked at one of the competitors and there were 0 cars in the parking lot? It's another central station, but there's nobody there. So having another monitoring center doesn't mean that you have redundancy. In my opinion, I'll break it down into 4 main components. It's a lot more complicated than this, but I'll kind of break it down. I think there's 4 main components of true redundancy. First, you gotta have on-site fault-tolerant equipment. UL really governs a lot of this stuff, that dual power supply, backup equipment, backup generators, things like that. But you also have to have automatic failover to one of your other locations. So if it's not working here, you got to send it there, and that should happen in real time and be able to redirect signals to other monitoring centers. And each one of our centers have 3 separate communication paths on 3 separate carriers to handle signals and phone calls. The other is hot redundancy. You probably hear this in a lot in the industry, but what is it? Hot redundancy it means it's on, it's powered up, and it's working 24/7. There's people there monitoring. It's hot redundancy as opposed to cold redundancy, which I'll talk in a little bit. It also has to be load sharing, which means that each site has to handle the alarm traffic in real time, all the time. So one alarm can go to New Jersey, one alarm can go to Texas, one alarm can go to Florida. And what that does, by having them monitor signals in real time is, let's say Florida suddenly disappeared into a giant sinkhole. Well, Texas and New Jersey are already monitoring those signals. Plus, we have the ability to overstaff those two signals. And we've actually been through these things, not a sinkhole, gladly, but we've been through nor'easters, hurricanes, things like that. And when this happens to us, our response times normally go down. A lot of other companies, the response times go through the roof. Then they got to be similarly staffed. And I'll talk about this. Similarly staffed and in separate geoverse locations. For instance, if you've got a central station here and you got another one just right over the river that you can just all drive to, it's likely affected by the same event. So you got to put these in different parts of the United States so they're not affected by the same types of events. Now, some companies have cold or disaster backup sites. I hear that term all the time, disaster recovery, and it raises the hair on the back of my neck because we don't want to have a disaster that we have to recover from. Think about that for a minute. It's a disaster. Now we got to, it denotes a period of downtime, which we don't want to have. And a cold or disaster backup means it may not be powered all the time. You got to go power up. It's better than having nothing. I will tell you, having another site is better than not having another site at all. But if it's not working all the time, it's really not doing you any good in that midterm, in that time in between when one fails and the other one is now operational. Another thing is I've noticed that some companies have a main and a backup site. Let's say 75% of the staff is at the main site, 25% is at the backup site. Now, that's great, but what happens when the main site fails? Now you have 25% of your employees stuck in a location handling 100% of the alarm traffic. I don't know how they do that. The answer is they can't, not with acceptable response times. Plus, you add to the fact I mentioned a lot of these things that take out communications and a monitoring center's ability to monitor also increase alarm traffic. So now you might have 25% of your staff trying to handle 150% of your alarm traffic. It can't happen. It's just simple math. So I thought I'd throw this in here is, with redundancy, having multiple locations, but where your dispatchers work matters. Something new consider is, where are they? There's been an ongoing debate about work from home. UL has updated their standards to allow work from home. But we've tested it, we've looked at it, and there are multiple challenges with work from home that I won't get into here, but we can talk about afterwards if you want to. One thing is, you look at my picture on the right, what's going on work from home? Who's there? Are they working? Are they asleep? Are there two heads in the picture? Are they even sitting at the computer? And on and on and on and on and on with communications and backup and things like that. So I guess I will go into this, but so multiple challenges with work from home, which I just said there. So that's why 100% of our dispatchers work in a UL listed monitoring center. Now during COVID, we did send all of our non-dispatch personnel, dealer support, tech support, billing people, they all went home. And I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them went home. They worked from home. And we used that extra space to socially distance. But also at the same time, we had multiples. We had 6 central stations, and we also didn't have all of our eggs in one basket when it came to employees anyway. So dispatchers worked out of our central stations and continue to do so today. But COVID did teach us some important lessons. One, you got to have a plan. I can tell you, I honestly don't know how robust our plan was, but COVID definitely taught us something. Like for instance, we got to have hundreds of laptops for people to take home if they need to do it. But listen, we don't see a situation where we will need this, but we're definitely prepared if we need to. So we're not in favor of work from homes, and I'll say it one more time, 100% of COPS monitoring dispatchers work in a UL listed central station. Number 2 is experience. Now, I'm not just talking about our 45 years of providing 100% wholesale monitoring. or 20 years of redundant monitoring. And the reason I mentioned 20 years of redundant monitoring is you don't just open up another monitoring center and automatically provide seamless monitoring between the two. There's a learning curve. I can tell you because we've done it. So we've been doing this for 20 years, and I think we're pretty good at it. Our leadership experience, top 11 executives have 29 years in all departments, ranging from 8 to 45 years. We've monitored millions of homes, businesses, and institutions. A lot of accounts means a lot of situations. And I'd be hard pressed to find a situation that we haven't or couldn't monitor. So, by being able to monitor all of those accounts, it really, bolsters our services. Plus thousands of dealers. We're not a dealer, we're a monitoring company. So the thousands of dealers give us feedback of all sizes of the tools they need to run their business. I mentioned that before. So a big central station needs more than a small central station. But guess what? The small central station benefits from the tools that we build for the big central stations. All of them benefit. And with experience, I'm not just talking about putting in the time. I'm talking about sharing our industry back into the industry by contributing to standards and even the 5-diamond training that we contributed to. Simply put, I'd say few companies have the experience that COPS has. But the experience I really wanted to focus on is the experience of acquiring 14 companies. Now think about that for a minute. We acquired 14 competitors, and there's no better way. You want to get a look at another company, buy them. There's no better way to get a look under the hood than acquiring another company. So we learned a few things. First, it reveals everything. We go through every nook and cranny, do all due diligence. We understand their technology, SOP, pricing structure, their conversions from all the monitoring platforms, how they use the data, their data structure, their action patterns and things like that. So we've converted systems off of all of the major platforms. One thing it allows us to do is also recognize and adopt best practices. Some companies did things that we didn't think of or that the dealers rely on. So we get to adopt those best practices when we acquire a company. It also taught us something new that we didn't really expect. It's how to recognize a viable company when we see one. In 2016, we acquired UCC, a company in Texas. And we learned through that experience, not only were they a viable company, we really exemplified how important the dealer monitoring company relationship is. So we decided to keep UCC open. At the time, they had one central station. Now they have two. And they now continue, how many years later, that they continue to operate as a separate brand on a separate monitoring platform with separate management. So you don't like COPS, we can introduce you to UCC as well. And anyway, I think we're the only company that has ever done that, to be honest with you. But most importantly, and it's going to lead me to the number one reason or the thing I found that COPS differentiates on, is that acquiring 14 companies gave us a deep insight to employment practices. And not one company even came close to what we do with our employees: hiring, training, communications, retention, reward systems, on and on and on. I haven't seen another company that even came close, which leads me to the number one differentiator at a monitoring company, and is people. And people are our greatest asset. And by far, people are going to have the greatest impact on your company. After all, like what is professional monitoring? To your customers, it's basically someone, not an IVR, it's someone on the phone giving them peace of mind that has their back. To you, they represent your company, your reputation, and dispatchers not only provide the services you're selling under your company's names, it's likely that dispatchers talk to your customers more than anybody else after the sales and installation. And they're not only talking to your customers through call lists, they're also talking to your customers' friends, neighbors, relatives, and so on. So good people can help drive referral sales. But it's not just any person. We think that our people have to have a very special blend of personality traits, character traits, and things like that. So, and identifying these is very difficult. So how do you do it? So let me illustrate. I could take anybody off the street and train them on these things, knowledge and skills. Put them in a chair, talk to them about monitoring, and they can learn it. But what really makes a successful dispatcher are these things. It's the underlying personality traits, how they feel about their business, what are about themselves, how they're motivated to do work. And these are the things that differentiate us at COPS. So how do we find that? Now, for us, it was industrial psychology. I don't know if you maybe heard the term, but we're not experts in like data or cybersecurity experts. We're not experts in human psychology. We're monitoring experts. So what do we do? Long ago, we hired an industrial psychologist. An industrial psychologist has a specialized degree. It basically for matching the right candidate with the right traits to the right job. And they also maximize motivation, team spirit to yield high performance. They also create employees to self-actualize, feel strong sense of belonging at the company. And this is exactly what you want in an elite workforce. And it's how we maintain our edge. So it sounds complicated. Well, because it is, but I'll simplify it. You put the wrong person in the wrong job, you're going to have poor performance and high turnover. Everybody knows that. And you put the right person in the right job, you're going to have better performance and lower turnover. But if you put the right person in the right job, give them all the training they need, the regular feedback, reward the heck out of them, build a strong culture around them, not only are you going to have low turnover, you're going to have superior performance. And that's the premise that we operate on. So to give you an idea of our gradation program that was built with the assistance of this industrial psychologist, the basic premise is it's an 18-month, and I say initial 18-month up or out program because it never ends. After level 6, you have to maintain that level. It's an up or out premise, which means you have to move to the next level or you have to make it to the next level or you're not going to make it at all. So the idea of this is we want to cultivate people that want to become experts, that want to take ownership in what they do. We're not looking for complacency. We want excellence, and we want people that want to strive to be better, move forward, and move ahead. The system's also designed to identify those people who need extra assistance so we can retrain them or help them out, and to weed out the ones who will never succeed. Some of them get through the interview process, we get to the training process, and they're just not going to make it. So we can only do these things with rigorous training and regular feedback, and then a lot of testing. And during this process, all dispatchers are TMA 5 Diamond certified somewhere in the gradation process. So to give an example, I talked about acquiring 14 companies. Here is an actual review from one of the companies that we acquired for their employees. You may have seen one like this. I've seen them before, but I was shocked to see that the monitoring company was using this. It's basically 18 different criteria. They're totally subjective. There's no rules of how somebody gets an excellent, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory. It's all up to the supervisor reviewing them. And interesting, I highlighted 2 of these on here, honesty, integrity, because I'm not quite sure why you would even give a review to somebody who didn't score well on honesty, integrity. I would think that they would probably be gone. By comparison, here's a glimpse into our proprietary gradation program. And this is probably more information than we've ever shared publicly. I summarized it, so don't get your hopes up. The first year alone, a dispatcher receives 12 evaluations with 1,263 specific measurable skills. Every single month, they're trained throughout the month, and at the end of every single month, they receive a review where they're tested on these things throughout the course of a year. And I talked about helping the people that want to move ahead. The people that want to move ahead thrive during this. You know what weeds out people that don't want to be here? It's 1,263 specific measurable skills. That's what weeds them out. They leave. It's overwhelming to them. They don't want to be here. After the first year, in the next 6 months, they have 2 more evaluations with 136 points. And then for the life of them at COPS monitoring, they get 6 annual reviews, 2 semi-annual formal reviews, and then 4 throughout the year, quarterly random telephone calls where they sit and they go through randomly selected telephone calls to do customer service training. So I looked at this and I looked at the documentation. I can honestly tell you, I have never seen at any company, let alone monitoring companies, an evaluation system that was more thorough than at COPS. Oh, I forgot to pop that up there. I apologize. And that's the ongoing training. So what do? You spend all of this time, money, and resources building great employees. So how do you retain them? It's important to retain your employees. You don't want another company to benefit to all of the time and effort that we put into them. We don't want to go to a competitor either. So what do? We reward them a lot. And like the training, I can say that I've never seen a company that goes further for its employees than COPS. The basic premise of the reward system is not only to give back to all the hard work that they've done, is that employees who are engaged and feel that they belong to something, they want to do a good job for you and your customers. So that's what we build. We have programs like our Club 6. I mentioned there's 6 levels of our programming, our gradation program. Once they reach level 6, we take them on trips and retreats, usually to very, very nice places, take them to see a show. Anyway, we give them back. We have something that we call Alarming You, where some of these trips it's the Alarming University. Some of these trips, again, to exotic places, but they're not just a reward. We also do learning there. We also do, I would call like MBA learning sessions and things like that, where we talk about case studies and how to apply them to our business. So by doing so, it kind of keeps that moving forward idea where employees want to get to the next level. Our chairman's word of excellence, we have hundreds and hundreds of nominations each year for people that go above and beyond. At the end of the year, the employees who win are not only recognized at our holiday party at each of our sites, they're also rewarded with a very nice cash prize. As I mentioned, the events and retreats are meticulously planned at 5-star events. It's places that they probably can't afford to go to on their own. I say probably, they can't afford to go to on their own. But what we do, and I thought was unique and I thought was brilliant, is employees get to bring a guest. And when I first experienced this, I had an aha moment of why it was so experienced. Well, first, 24/7 monitoring takes a toll. It really does. Are these dispatchers and employees really care about what they do? And they sometimes take this home with them. It's a big time suck sometimes too. So we want to reward the people that are in their life by helping to support those. And you know what always happens at one of these events? One of the guests looks around and says, "Wow, my company doesn't do this for us." And then you see the employee who brought them, their chest puffs out. It's just another way to incentivize our employee, reward and incentivize our employees. Our culture is important. It's a very strong, spirited culture, and it's very important, which is why we have a VP of Quality and Culture. I don't know if any other company has a VP of Quality and Culture. She's been with us for 30 years, and her primary responsibility is basically to protect our vision and values and make sure that they're there for the next generation. Because I can tell you right now, we don't have an exit strategy. We have a succession plan, and we're going to be here for a while. So it's our strong culture that binds our employees together under a common cause of people and helping our dealers. Plus, our culture is actually important to you because our good quality of service and professional work is directly tied back to our culture and core values. What does this give this? How does this translate into numbers? Depth on the bench. If you're a sports fan, you might know what that means. So As I mentioned, our leadership average is 29 years, but here's something interesting. 71 employees at COPS have more than 10 years of tenure. Some of them have more than 20, and some of them have more than 30. So this is a big indicator to me that what we're doing is working. The average dispatcher tenure after completing the gradation process is 6.1 years. And we promote within when possible. It's all part of the program. We want to build them to be better so they can step into better roles later. And by promoting within and doing these programs, 96% of our management staff started in an entry-level position. Well, why is this important? Well, that means there's the depth on the bench. It means we have a very large number of talented players, and that who all have a thorough understanding about our company and how to best serve you and your customers. And those happy customers translate into to customer loyalty for your company as well. So you thought you were going to tune into a webinar about monitoring company, and what you got was a lesson in psychology, but it's important, and it's how we identify and create superior service. But it's not all about people. It's mostly about people, but it's not all about people. We also have technology that the customers want. So we have, and not only do we have it, it's selectable by signal. So if you want a text message on the front door and you want an alarm signal on the back door, or you want, you can customize each one of these signals and how you want them to respond for each customer situation. So we like to say it's technology when you want it and people when you need us. So that's it. Those are my 6 things that I think are differentiators at COPS, but I'm not done. So, but I got a few more things I want to talk to you about. And I'd love to talk to you about these after the fact. So I hope you have some questions. So just in case, because monitoring companies talk about this, is that I get a kick out of, we say we're a monitoring company and we monitor alarms of all types. So yes, we do monitor alarms of all types. Even custom situations and things that don't even exist yet can integrate with our API. Our MPER Center is monitored in a dedicated section, and so is our video. And about video, I just wanted to close with this and maybe one more thing. Video, we've branded our video Alarm Watch Services. It does all of the things that modern systems do now. Ken and I talked before this about virtual doormans, virtual guards, person detection. We do all of that. So if you want information about video and get into video, I encourage you to just give me your information at alarmwatchvideo.com, and we'll send you our pricing, our capabilities, and things like that. And I wanted to talk about, now, Ken thought differently, but my thought was, I've talked to a lot of dealers who always outsource their videos. So he said, I'm an alarm guy, I give my video stuff to a video guy. But I had a thought that back in the day when the alarm licensing rules were written, they were written about alarm systems. And I think that an alarm system was probably a little bit more definable. But today, with camera systems being able to detect things, send us events, which then require dispatching, now you're into a situation where you can earn revenue again on some of the systems that you weren't earning revenue on again, and only you can, not the people you outsourced it to, because in order to write an alarm contract, you got to be an alarm contractor. So maybe we can talk about that a little more after the fact. Last thing, second to last thing, is we wonder, is anybody doing in-person events anymore? You know, we are. You know, we're one of the founding companies of this energy conference. The premise is simple. It brings industry thought leaders together so they can interact and learn from each other. Essentially, it expands on the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of all parts. And the dealers and monitoring companies and other industry stakeholders, that we rely on each other. We not only rely on each other to survive, we're better when we work together. We've hosted 3 of these so far. The last one in Philadelphia was 100% on video, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it. We even had a retired 3-star Marine general talk about the importance of adapting with relating to video. So we put a whole lot of time and efforts into these into these events. And we hope if it comes to a city near you that you'll attend. And if you like webinars, we do those too. So on our events page on our website, we'll have webinars. And if you're on our email list, you'll get an invitation. And the last thing, and arguably the most important thing of the entire presentation, is that yes, we do accept Ken Kirschenbaum contracts at COPS Monitoring. So
You're right. That is the most important thing.
that's it.
Thank you.
And that's
Dave,
it. That's my story.
a great informative presentation for an impressive alarm monitoring center. So we have a bunch of questions. I'm reading them to you as I read them. So if some take you by surprise, sorry. Does COPS manage, let's keep them brief because we have enough to finish out our time. Does COPS manage monitoring centers overseas?
We do not.
Notice
I can
that
tell you we get a lot of requests to do stuff like that, but we don't.
Notice that there were 6 centers a year ago. Now you have 3. What happened?
So what happened? So, you know, we grew to 6 central stations for a couple of things. The more central stations we built, the less reliability we had on any one central station. But not so much from a technological standpoint. It was diversifying our staffing. We can hire in 1 of 6 places, but COVID kind of changed the dynamics of signal delivery, and through some electronic means, the introduction of chat, some SMS stuff, we were able to reduce the signals that operators handled by 40%. So now we've got 40% fewer alarms, and we have almost empty central stations. And we also know that through this gradation process that there is a bar there on a graph, like where operators thrive the best. You overwork them, they burn out. You don't work them enough, and service suffers. So we had 3 central stations that we didn't need them, to be honest with you. So we decided to consolidate them back into 3.
You know, with today's technology and communication pathways, really a central station can be anywhere in the U.S. and work just as efficiently and quickly as whether they are located in different places or not. The only advantage I see to perhaps a local central station is that they might be able to assist a small dealer who needs some backup service tech or something like that a central station may be able to provide them with. But I think the large central stations like COPS probably has plenty of resources that they can use to help their customers, who are the dealers, manage their business. And I would assume that COPS spends a lot of time, as much time as it spends cultivating its employees and operators, cultivating its dealers as well. I don't know if you touched on that, but I'm sure that you do it, whether you said so or not.
Yeah.
You mentioned your in-person events. Well, I hope you're going to be at the K&K holiday party this year, David. It's December 14th, and you know we invite the whole industry. Hoping they don't all show up, but they're all going to be invited in Old Westbury, New York on December 14th. Certainly Ira better show up. I mean, he's, you know, around the corner, I think. So we'll expect him. Do you have an installation company?
We do not.
Okay. How about data entry? Do you provide 24-hour, or is there a way to get information added off time? Data entry.
Well, yeah, there is a way to get stuff added off time, is through Empower. It's available 24/7. Now, if you need to speak to somebody, there are limited hours for data entry, but if you really need to get something done, we can get it done for you.
Data entry, is that done by the dealer through a portal, or is all information input by COPS employees?
Both. Ideally, honestly, we think it's better to go through Empower, because the fewer hands that the data passes through, the fewer chances you have for issues. So, facsimiles, emails, things like that, data passes there. It just increases the chance for errors. Not to say that we're fraught with errors, but But I would say empower. It's there if you need training. If you don't want to use it, that's another thing. But after hours data entry, we can certainly do it. But I would hope that would be the exception rather than the rule.
We use COPS. Our customers don't like the automated messages. They would prefer to speak to an operator. Do you plan on going back to actual operators calling instead of automated messages? I don't know when you would use automated messages. Maybe you can tell us.
That was one. We use an IVR, and I think most central I think all central stations do. And we only use them for non-dispatchable events, low batteries, power failures, troubles, things like that.
Basically trouble signals.
Yeah.
Do you allow home monitoring? You don't.
We do.
And what security do you have with remote dispatchers? None, because you don't allow it. You already said that. There are several other automation platforms, such as E24 Rapid and Arizona Central Monitoring. I don't know who they are, but automated platforms. So maybe there are others. But COPS is proprietary, I assume, right?
Correct.
I used UCC in the past. Now they're part of COPS. So what software do they use?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're part of COPS. They operate independently. There's some back office stuff that we do, HR, billing, things like that. But from a monitoring perspective, they're completely autonomous from us. They monitor on the Stages platform.
Stages, whereas COPS has its own proprietary platform.
Correct.
I don't know if you have time. I don't think we have time for this. How do you train your people over and above minimum? More time, I suppose, right?
Well, I think I touched on that, and I'd be happy to talk about it further if you want to email me.
We don't have time. You guys can, whoever asked it can ask David after the webinar. How do you cover cyber attacks?
How do you cover the? I mean, I went into that in detail. I think our SOC 2 does that. And listen, I'm actually glad you asked that. I'm not sitting here saying that we are 100% bulletproof. I'm not. I don't know that anybody is. But I think there's two types of companies: the companies that have been hacked and the companies that don't know they've been hacked. So we want to be the ones that have not been hacked, and we're doing everything we can. And I would say more than anybody else. It's my belief, whether that's the truth or not. I'd love to hear about it, but I think we go more above and beyond to try to protect our data and our systems than any other monitoring.
Someone wants to know how you can protect against cyber hacking, but I assume that COPS has whatever is available. I'm sure they're using it. Does UCC have their own software? You already answered that. And she already said they use Stages, so we don't need to go through that. They want to know if this is confidential. With all the programs, do you offer higher pay than minimum wage? I guess that's for your operators, so I'm not sure for who.
Well, yeah, I would definitely higher than minimum wage, and I would say that we offer a competitive salary or competitive wage.
It sounds like you have also some awards program that your employees must enjoy. As an East Coast dealer, wanted to thank you for your support with the associations. Okay, that's a good one. I want to comment on your operating retail. Some central stations have a retail operation. They're usually independent. Certainly the dedicated wholesale central station operations are sometimes someone in the family perhaps owns an installing company as well. They're really operated independently. Those companies that are still operating a retail operation and a wholesale central station, or just monitoring their own accounts as a central station, they are dinosaurs, and they all need to move their accounts to a central station like COPS. And if you're monitoring third party, besides your own accounts, you have an opportunity to sell to an outfit like COPS. They're happy to buy you. You're welcome to call me and I'll find you a buyer, a central station that's willing to buy your accounts. Is a saleable asset. But if you're operating your own central station, and David, you could correct me if you think I'm way off. If you wouldn't be paying $75,000 a month to another central station, then you can't be operating your own central station profitably. Not a central station that can compete in any way with any of the modern centrals like COPS that offers a wide variety of services that you, as a small central station operation, can't possibly. And that's the bottom line, and there's no way around it. Now, there are a lot of old timers out there, or maybe even young guys getting into it. They think they've got the magic potion for operating a central station, and they can manage, with managing 5,000 accounts or even 10,000 accounts, even 20,000 accounts. You can't. You don't have the resources that an operation like COPS has, and you need to recognize it. Is COPS, hope I didn't catch you speechless with that little speech. Is COPS DOD, I don't know, what is it, compliant, I guess?
It's funny, and I was going to talk to you about this because you're not really supposed to tell people you're DOD, but you can say that you're UL 2050. So it's like, I don't, what's the difference if you say that? COPS is not, UCC is UL 2050.
Do you find that dealers know about things like that? You think a dealer that does monitor or enter into a deal with a defense facility or someone doing business with a defense facility, you think they know whether their central station is DOD compliant? They're all signing a form that says, yes, we're DOD compliant, but do they really know if they're DOD compliant?
I would say yes, because I know that we've had tours in places like that. Then we got to have a skiff as well, and some of in UCC where it's that special compartmentalized in something. It's an important area, and that's one area that I don't have a lot of experience in is UL 2050, but I do know that we offer it out of UCC.
Well, I don't know. All you need to know is that a Department of Defense requires a certain level of compliance, and you can't monitor that facility, and I think it goes beyond that. Anyone doing business with the Department of Defense, and there's a lot of vendors, subcontractors doing business with the Department of Defense. It's a big population. And so the dealers need to be mindful of that. Central stations need to be mindful of that. We're out of time. I want to thank David Smith for his presentation. It was a great presentation, which of course he had a high bar because you would expect this from COPS, and he delivered. So I want to thank him again, and I want to thank the folks at COPS for their professionalism and diligence in this industry. And also for referring so many dealers to me for contracts. I certainly appreciate that. So David's contact information is on the screen. You have any questions, follow up with him. He'll be happy to hear from you. And all webinars are recorded. You'll see this one up on the K&K website under our webinar series page, and everybody will be able to check out this presentation as well as all the others at your leisure. So David, any last word, and we're out of here.
No, just thank you very much for hosting and everybody who attended. And if we didn't get to your question, please send me an email.
Okay, everybody, have a great day.